Was punishment reform? Or simply control? Have we built prisons? Or have we built cages? Is it redemption? Or sadism? Fines, exile, banishment, torture chambers, probation, solitary confinement, and even amputation. Punishment has been a common mechanism to maintain order and peace for centuries. The objective of punishments is practically to uphold justice by discouraging wrongs through aversive stimuli, and it has been proven to deviate criminals from their crime by conflicting different types of pain on them. But what if? What if that's just a mechanism to feign justice and exercise control? What if it's a puppet to the innate human instinct of narcissism, domination, and desire for power? Are we being controlled? Are we deceiving ourselves? All in the name of peace. Suppressing a person of their liberty is practically justified oppression. We, as society, have viewed punishment and rewards as a mechanism to teach and instill values and practices for decades. Probably a result of evolutionary circumstances, as seen not only in humans, but in a vast majority of mammals. That both pain and pleasure teach, but suffering leaves a greater impact. This instinct to avoid pain is then intellectually used to manipulatively teach individuals to reducing one to a mere puppet to trauma. Also taking into account that humans are inherently narcissistic and crave dominance over others, so much so that we instinctively tend to abuse power over others out of the hedonistic pleasure we get from having authority. I could go on to question if empathy is a made-up concept man created to socially manipulate people into achieving his own goal. But we must question, are we really gating them, or is it just sadistic control? Taking inspiration from the common phrase, rubbing salt on an open wound. One of the main reasons why punishment does not effectively reform crime is because the root of the method of resolving crimes through punishment is the fear of the consequences of the punishment, and not a change in morality itself. People change their behavior and refrain from committing crimes to avoid punishment from a fear-driven standpoint, and not a complete moral understanding of why the committed crime is something to refrain from, leading to a trauma-infused approach instead of a morally reconstructing one. Experiment conducted by John B. Watson and Rosalie Reynard in 1920 can demonstrate this. To instill fear in an 11-month-old infant, they introduced Albert to a white rat and established that the infant was not afraid of it. Then, they repeatedly paired the presentation of the rat with a bell banging right behind his head. Eventually, Albert began to cry and show distress simply upon seeing the white rat, even without the loud sound, as Albert's fear extended to other furry white objects, including a rabbit and a Santa Claus mask, which carried on into adulthood. Leading to the next issue, trauma-inflicting punishments can cause resentment instead of remorse. Harsh punishments can make offenders feel distressed, angry, hopeless, victimized, and can lead them to seek vengeance through misaligned perception. Extreme buildup of this form of resentment can cause them to reject society's values and norms instead of rehabilitating themselves into it. Punishments only control prisoners into temporary phases of pain, and in many cases, potentially stimulate them into committing worse crimes in an act of self-serve justice due to developed victim complexes induced by the very punishments intended to fix them. In authoritarian countries, People are imprisoned or even executed for speaking against the government under the mention of crime. This shows a misplaced portrait of how governments can misuse their authority to punish people in the name of moral reform and resurgence. Like in the case of Nasrin Sotoudeh, a prominent human rights lawyer in Iran who now extreme crimes seem as though they deserve brutal punishments. But what change does it make if the criminal fears pain and not their own inhumanity? Now obviously, the question arises, if not punishments, what is the solution? Their approach to extreme punishments would be instilling moral understanding through emotional and psychological approaches and enforcing rehabilitation, so the root cause could be dealt with. A successful example of this would be CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, the goal being changing distorted thinking patterns that lead to criminal behavior. Why do we have more punishment mechanisms than reforming ones? And why have we been putting more effort into punishing people than saving them?